Hello, how's it going? See if there's our presenter. Yay! Okay,
I made it.
yes, excellent. Um, we we had some technical difficulties, and I guess learning to roll with the punches is part of life, huh?
Definitely part of the present.
So welcome everybody. Got a few more people joining us. So our presenter today is Jeremy Dean. He's the Vice President of Education, right, at Hypothesis. And he's going to be demonstrating Hypothesis, which is a social annotation tool um, and everything. So this is going to be fun. If you would like to be part of his demonstration that he'll be doing in just a little bit, if you can message, put your net ID in the chat. Then yeah, so put your net ID in the chat and I can add you to a BYU Learning Suite community that we're using temporarily for this demonstration. And we'll try to get you added in there before he gets to the demo. Without further ado, let me just make you a co-host, Jeremy, and then you should be able to share your screen and do whatever you need to.
Great.
Unless you're trying to do breakout rooms. If that's the case, then let me know and I can make you host.
No, I think we've got a small enough group here where we can stick together, keep it simple. I just want to check if my colleague Erin made it in. We're both having trouble earlier.
I am here, Jeremy.
Excellent.
Great.
Good to hear you. And I mentioned in the chat to share your discipline, if you don't mind. It's always good to know where folks are coming from. I'm an English professor by training. I have a PhD in English from UT Austin here in Austin, Texas, where I'm beaming in to talk to you guys from. Yeah, I can try to adjust my comments and speak specifically to your disciplines. So it's good to see those in the chat, and hopefully we'll have a chance during this little workshop to speak to some of your individual use cases. Hypothesis is a tool that helps you teach your students to read. I don't think of that as a kind of remedial task. I think that's sort of something we're always, as humans, learning to do, to read and read better in different contexts. And certainly as students move into higher education and attend college at a place like BYU, there's new kinds of texts that folks are reading, new disciplinary specific languages and concepts that they're being introduced to in that reading. And this is a tool that that helps you help them and helps them help each other as they learn to read in your course. Are you guys seeing my screen?
I am.
Great. So I'm going to go through a deck, a little bit of background about Hypothesis and collaborative annotation, and then yes, we will go into Learning Suite and show you how the tool works there and hopefully play around. So if you want to play around with us today as part of the workshop-y part of this, please do message your net ID to Mike here, and then you'll be able to join. And there will be prizes, by the way, if you participate. How much time do we have today, Mike? Do we have the hour or just a half hour? Anybody can answer that question if you know. Just trying to look back here. Looks like we have the hour. I'm going to
Mike is muted,
okay.
and yeah, it's an hour, I think.
Yeah, sorry, we have until at least until 11:50, but we do have till the top of the hour. If
okay, well, you can grab. So sure, you can grab this deck that I have here at BYU X Hype. It's a bit.ly link. I can drop it into the chat as well. So there are some resources within the deck that they might be useful to you moving forward. And maybe Mike and I can make both the, I don't know if we're recording this, but we can certainly make the deck available for later if you want to review it or share this with colleagues. Does that sound a reasonable plan, Mike, what I've outlined so far? Sorry to keep asking you questions when you're probably trying to help people get into the course.
Yes, that sounds fine. Make sure you share that bit.ly link with me, because I can also put that on the Teach Anywhere website where we're going to put the recording of this session. Yeah.
Okay. And it's in the chat, but I'll certainly share it with you later.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm imagining that a lot of you are used to teaching face-to-face, and that's a big part of of your work as you've conceived it over the years and as you become a professor and instructor. And that the past spring has been challenging. Some of you may be somewhat more accustomed to teaching in remote environments, but it may be very new to some of you, maybe a lot of you. And I just wanted to share this quote so that you can take heart in the idea that I do believe there are authentic and engaging places that we can inhabit with our students online. And I think collaborative annotation, or the margins of the readings for our courses, is a place that we can reconstitute some of the face-to-face activities that we're accustomed to as more content, as more teaching and learning is taking place in remotely, given the current crisis. So this is Jennifer Howard in the Chronicle of Higher Education several years ago, talking about social reading technologies like Hypothesis, sometimes called collaborative annotation technologies. Online, a book could be a poem, novel, short story, essay, academic article. Online, a book can become a gathering place, a shared space where readers record their reactions and conversations. I like to start with that quote just to give you a little bit of heart that we can still continue to do the work that we're accustomed to when we move our teaching online. I used to teach English at UT, English and composition. I also taught high school English for many years. And I used to hand out this poem by Billy Collins on the first day of every semester alongside my syllabus. It would be the syllabus, and probably this would be sort of attached to the syllabus, because that's how integral I felt the practice of annotation had been in my own career as a student and as a scholar, and how important and critical I thought it would be for my student success in my course that, here's what we'll be doing for the next 8 to 12 weeks or whatever it might be. And here's, your primary tool for being successful as we move through this together. We have all seized the white perimeter as our own and reached for a pen, if only to show we did not just laze in an armchair turning pages, we pressed a thought into the wayside, planted it an impression along the verge. Those of you guys that follow trends in education research will know, we ought to probably believe in the idea of active learning, wanting your students not to just be passive recipients of knowledge, but to be participating in their acquisition of knowledge and even creation of knowledge. So that's probably not a new concept. And of course, annotation is all about active reading. So it's a sort of subcategory of active learning. And it's nothing new, right? It wasn't a radical proposition to suggest that my students should annotate as part of their academic practice in my course. It's been done for centuries, since probably before the invention of the book, and continues today in many new forms. I would say that even some of the social media platforms we use are a kind of form of annotation. But as we move online, and certainly as we move our delivery of our readings online, we lose the margins as a place to practice this basic literacy skill. So part of what Hypothesis is doing is trying to bring back the margin as a place for students to practice academic skills, to become engaged with their readings, to better comprehend and begin critically thinking about their readings. But it's bigger than that, because we have a sort of digital networked environment that we're now working on. So annotation looks a lot like what it did in the past, but it also takes on some new features. So our vision of annotation at Hypothesis is that any website, article, ebook, document, or piece of multimedia can have multiple layers of annotation. You can still have that traditional layer of private marginal notes at the bottom there. There can also be a public layer. This public layer is actually disabled in our implementation within learning management systems like Learning Suite. But people are using Hypothesis publicly on the web in a variety of professions across the world, right? And one example of this is the Washington Post is a customer of Hypothesis and uses our annotation tool to comment on primary sources from the news. So you can go and see their sort of public use in the journalism profession of this type of technology. But for many of you, this is really about private groups using Hypothesis. So collaborative reading and annotating groups. You can have private groups for your colleagues. Our demo site today will be working together as colleagues in a course shell to read and annotate together. And then of course there's private groups for all the courses you teach. I want to share 3 top level pieces of feedback we've gotten from students and instructors who've used our tool in the past to help you think about how you might deploy it yourselves. And I will say, please feel free to use the chat if you have questions or you just want to huzzah the speaker. It's always nice to know that people are still there. And Aaron can answer questions if you have specific questions about Hypothesis. And we'll be getting again into the demo and the pragmatics in just a second. Again, this is one value proposition that's in the part of the not newness of annotation, right? That Hypothesis makes reading active. This is probably something you already desire from your students, to be active readers, critical thinkers with the material that you have them read. And so this is just a new way to do that online. And the newness of that online piece, though, brings with it some new ways to be active, right? Traditionally, we're using a pen, maybe a highlighter, some sticky notes when we annotate in the text. There are some new tools that the digital environment allows us to use as we engage with material. And this screenshot kind of demonstrates that. This is an English professor who had students annotating all his works, all the works in a sort of anthology of literature for an American literature course. And at some point, you know, he got bored and he decided, I'm tired of all the textual responses, textual, you know, engagement with text. So he got inspired to have students annotate Edna St. Vincent Millay exclusively with images, because Hypothesis allows you to annotate with images and video and links. And you can think about this in your disciplinary specific or skill level specific applications of the tool. How might the use of images and video and links and other aspects of multimedia be powerful ways for students to engage with text, to better understand text, to help each other understand text, and to begin critical thinking. One example from my wife, I see somebody in a lab coat. I don't know if there's people that are scientists in the room, but my wife's a biologist, and when she's used collaborative annotation in the past, she's an expert in frog song. So she has a particular Panamanian frog that she's an expert in, and she would have students read academic articles about this frog. And, you know, no offense, it's true in English too. There's, you know, sometimes dry, you know, just sort of text-based, maybe some graphs and things like that. And students used the tool to annotate with images, and, you know, some student would add a picture of the frog, right? Or even a vocalization of the frog from a YouTube video. And I remember there was even one time when a student found the frog song remixed to Panamanian discotheque music. That may not be, you know, the most intellectual engagement with the material, but it does bring it to life, and there may be a use for that. And anyway, it's just meant to inspire you in terms of thinking about the ways that images and video and links might be useful ways to help students engage with the content and give them different ways to engage with the content. This one I think is pretty new. When I handed out that Billy Collins poem, I graded my students on papers weeks later, right? I didn't teach them how to annotate. I didn't check their annotations. I didn't talk about harvesting their annotations into notes that might turn into papers. All that process was largely invisible to me. The reading process in large, and the sort of constituent, the you know, processes that follow from the initial reading were largely invisible. And one of the cool things about Hypothesis is it makes this process visible. For one, it makes this process visible in the kind of reading compliance sense. I'm sure as professors, you've had the experience where you look out over your audience and you wonder, did anybody do the reading? And this is a way to know that people have been in there, that your students have been in there, right? They've left some fingerprints on the text in the form of these annotations. And so you do know, or you can sort of enforce a certain engagement or reading of the text through the tool. But I think more importantly, you can know, you know, where were they confused? Where were they excited? And intervene accordingly, right? If you see a particular student excited about a concept, you can nurture that excitement in that line of inquiry. If you see a point of confusion, students might help each other through a point of confusion, but you can also be there to say, oh, wow, this passage really gave people difficulty, and I can join the conversation in Hypothesis, or I can use that data to change how I'm gonna meet with my students face-to-face, to change my class preparation. And then finally, Hypothesis makes reading social. This is by far the most powerful aspect for students, the fact that their teachers and their classmates are there as they're reading and they're not alone, and they can get help through the text. is by far the most powerful thing. From student feedback, they'll again and again say the biggest benefit of Hypothesis for them was peer-to-peer learning. And this is a great quote. Hypothesis is my literary Facebook. When I'm reading, I sometimes wonder, does anyone actually understand this? Am I crazy? With this brilliant tool, I know I'm not alone. Certainly wish I had had a tool like this when I was in grad school, because I often felt reading the Derrida or something like that was a pretty lonely, disorienting experience. Any questions so far? You can unmute or drop them into the chat. I'm now going to transition, and I hope you're inspired by the background pedagogy of it all. But now we're going to get into the practical, how's it work of it all. But if there are any questions, I'll take a sip of coffee while I'm waiting and just checking to see if anybody has something they want to raise. You can unmute, or you can drop it in the chat, or else I'll move on to the demo part. Great. Well, when Hypothesis is active in a course, you can select text and you can annotate. You can reply to existing annotations. This is a key piece to think about. It's true that not all annotation needs to be discursive. There's a use case for just student writing annotation and teacher seeing it as a valuable pedagogical activity. But largely, I think the power of Hypothesis comes from the conversations that can ensue in the margins. One way to think about Hypothesis is that it's like moving the discussion forum from another tab or section of the LMS to the text itself. Obviously, that's important in English. We want to keep our students close to the textual evidence and grounding their claims in textual evidence. But I've learned it's true really across the disciplines that, academic argumentation really originates from other material, other written material. And so that's a key piece. And of course, annotating together in groups. So here are some resources for you to refer back to, things that you can actually share with students about some basics, thinking about how much text to select in terms of annotation etiquette, and thinking about when to reply or create a new annotation, all the way up to how to add video, images, and links in your annotations. I will say that, as you probably know, the LMS at BYU is unique to BYU. Fortunately, it's LTI compliant, so our app can play in there. Mike has given me access to a course, and I've built some material in there so that we can play around. And we could build out some guides for you with how to work Hypothesis and Learning Suite, but I haven't done that yet. So eventually we could build out some guides step by step how to make a Hypothesis assignment. But at this point, I think we should, after 2 more slides, hop into Learning Suite. So if you haven't gotten in there, try to get in there. Again, there will be prizes if you can create an annotation and praise, public praise. But basically, when Hypothesis works in an LMS, you can make your readings annotatable. And you can also make your readings, or make those annotations, gradable, meaning that there'll be a way to see that students have annotated, and then see a particular student's contributions to the larger conversation and send a grade to the grade. This is a screenshot from Canvas. It's not exactly what it looks like in Learning Suite, but let's go there and check out what it looks like in Learning Suite. Oh, I'm gonna have to log in again. All right, you guys, I'm in so I'm gonna go back to instructor view. I'm gonna pull up my email from Mike that told me how to do this. All right, so you guys see me here in Learning Suite? Look somewhat familiar? This is all, I believe, taking place in what you understand as assignments. And I've got an assignment here. And when I click on it, I guess I'm a teacher now, so I can the teacher just go to it? Or do I have to go into student view?
Yeah, to launch the tool, you have to go into student view right now. We are working to change that so that it'll be easier in the future for those third-party tools like Hypothesis. So, in fact, we had a meeting about that yesterday, about how we need to, in the new version of Learning Suite, need to make that a little easier.
All right.
Because
So I launched the learning module, and what it's showing me here is an article, PDF of an article that I've added to Learning Suite or through Hypothesis. And over here, this is Hypothesis. And look at that. Even before I demonstrated it, somebody has already gotten in here and annotated. That's what this little red icon means. It means while you've been reading and annotating this yourself, a new annotation is showing up. This person definitely gets not just a sticker, but some other piece of swag. So let's see who it is. Bradley. Thank you. Well done, Bradley, for getting in there and annotating on this text already. I can go ahead. Great question. Not really. So I can respond to Bradley's annotation here, starting a threaded conversation. And yes, I did assign you guys an article that I wrote, but I'm going to show you how to create a hypothesis assignment with a different one. But for those of you a little behind Bradley, you can, when a hypothesis is active on a text, I can select text, like so. I have the option to highlight. Highlighting is a default private act, or I can annotate. And annotations can be public or private, just to me, or public. And when I say public in this context, I mean to everybody rostered for the group. You can see up here, Hypothesis Demo Course. This is a private group that's only accessible through this LMS shell. And so I'm going to share this to the group, and I'm going to say something to them. I will say I don't know if I can give a full sticker to people that write something like test annotation or can you see this? If you like to get the sticker, you kind of have to actually read something and make an intelligent comment about it. It can be something snarky like Bradley's. I accept that as a valuable annotation. So I'm gonna follow my own instructions here. What do we do when we lose bid? Just kind of post my annotation. So now everybody should be able to see that that's on here. And again, I see new annotations are coming in. So Mike has created an annotation, and it looks like there may be a whole nother one here. Pauline, congratulations, you get a sticker. Yeah, I'm gonna give folks a chance to get in here and annotate on top of this brilliant piece of writing by yours truly. And let us know if you're having trouble getting into the course. Bradley might be able, Mike might be able to help with that. Or if you have questions about what you're experiencing in the interface. Once you get in here, you should be able to select text and create an annotation. Extra points if you add an image or a video. You can reply to your classmates, as it were. I'm going to refresh again. And can't see who joined us there. But I'm going to give you guys a second to try to get up and running here and check the chat. And refresh again, and we've got Denise joining us. Thank you, Denise. I will point out you can do tags in your annotation. Actually, let me do another selection here and just show you a few more features of the annotation window. We try not to be pedagogically prescriptive in terms of how you use this, right? Obviously, as an English professor by training, I have my own, ideas around close reading and the ways that I expect my students to read material. So I might have specific ways I want them to use this space. That may vary dependent on whether it's a freshman course or a senior level course. As a biologist or a nursing professor, you may have other ideas about how you want students to read. It may not be close reading as defined in literary studies, but something else, or particular things you want your students to look for or perform as they're doing reading. So this space is really meant to be flexible for you in terms of discipline, skill level, and even point in a course. You might have easier type of annotation exercises or lower stakes ones at the beginning of a course and scale up to something or scaffold up to something more rigorous. Start with just asking questions in the first readings to creating annotations that are like little mini essays with MLA citation by the end of a term. I can format the text of an annotation. You have a little, what you see is what you get editor up here. I can add links. That's what this little paperclip or whatever it is, or I guess it's a chain yeah, it's a piece of a chain. I can add an image. I can use latex. I didn't see if anybody's coming to us from math-like disciplines, but I can use math script, write equations in my annotations. I can drop a YouTube video in here. If you can add some of those multimedia elements, I'll include some extra special swag for you. Like Mike was able to add a meme, which is great. And Ty, are you a friend of, do you know Nate? And Amy was here. This is great. I do wish the class was doing a little more replying to each other. Remember that knowledge is a collaborative production. It's not just about you performing your own knowledge. So I do hope you will ask each other questions and use that reply feature. But we can see that there's some healthy activity on the text, so this is great. I can reorder the sidebar by recency to see who's been here most recently. So Ty's annotation is the most recent one until I refresh here, but we got Amy and Mike and Denise. Pauline responded to Denise. Thank you for that. All right, good job. Let's see, what else do I want to point out? I can search the sidebar. So that's an example of, let me show you one more time about what you can do in the annotation window. If you're ready, because some of you guys are quite, fast learners. So one way to structure student engagement with a text is to use the tag feature that I have shown right here. So I can enter a tag here. Maybe there's sort of 3 things I want my students to look for in their reading, 3 aspects of the writing that I want them to identify, 3 lenses I want them to use as they're reading. So an example from composition might be, we used to, at UT, use the Aristotelian method and ask students to look for ethos, pathos, and logos in arguments that they were reading and in their rhetorical analysis. So I might ask my students to look for examples of those rhetorical techniques and then, tag them. So I'm finding an example of emotional appeal and I tag it with the word ethos and I maybe explain what's going on in terms of emotional appeal. And that does a couple things. That allows me to, as a professor, search the text for pathos. What was it, ethos? Sorry, I messed that up. I'm gonna correct myself. Search the text for a particular term or lens and zoom in on that. And that, again, allows 2 things. One, it's going to allow me to, in class, even if that's in an awkward Zoom meeting like this, search the text for pathos, have that lens up on the text and talk about the emotional appeal of the argument that we're reading together. It also will eventually allow me to grade my students and see have they performed the different readings that I have asked them to. So this top bar up here, and allow me to be meta. Oh, I don't have annotation here. You can see up here, this little white toolbar at the top is the grading toolbar. And what this allows me to do is cycle through students one by one. So I can see just Denise's annotation right now and give her a grade. And I could go in and see, like, did Denise properly identify ethos, pathos, logos at the same time as part of that grading? I can go in and see Bradley's contributions here. I can see Amy's. So I'm going one by one through students to see their contributions. And I can submit a grade to the grade book. One thing, Mike, just as a bookmark to come back to, I wasn't sure if there was a way to not make the annotatable reading gradable. I didn't see in my workflow for creating this assignment, which maybe we can turn to now, I didn't see a place where I could sort of say, actually, I don't want this to communicate with the grade book.
Yeah, I can show that to you in just a minute. When you're demoing the creation of it, I'll show you where you can turn that off.
Before I go into demoing the creation, we've had some great participation. I appreciate that. Once it's safe to send stuff through the mail, I'll make sure you guys get a swag package, a care package of Hypothesis swag with some stickers. So Mike and Aaron, let's take some names and make sure that nobody who didn't put an annotation in there gets a sticker. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody gets a sticker. So any questions at this point? I'll check the chat before I go into showing you how to create such an activity. And during that creation process, I will respond to some of the questions about copyright in the chat. So we always get this issue. We often get this issue, Pauline, about can you make the file so only one student annotates and is graded, or is it always discussion? It is always discussion. It is designed as a conversation discussion tool. And first, let me just say, I totally understand the use case for wanting to know Heidi's specific reading of this article, not in the context of her classmates. As somebody at Stanford recently put it to me, actually in the College of Education, unbiased reading. They wanted a tool that would allow for unbiased reading. And I get that, it's valuable. I will just push back on it slightly, if you'll allow me to say that, especially in higher education, it seems to me the goal can never be unbiased reading. There's knowledge that exists before us and conversations that exist before us. And part of the project of higher ed is to engage with those conversations and to make claims that are informed by, but yet distinct from those that came before us. That's something I take from some thinkers in the space of composition. But even as I push back, Pauline, I totally get the use case, especially when I taught high school. I didn't, it was much more important to me to understand that every student had grappled with the green light, the particular symbol in that novel, and had independently made an effort at their own analysis, rather than, student A building on student B. But there's a power in the discursive. And so that's my rant on that. But Pauline, we at the same time are considering adding a feature where you could sort of make it more of a blank slate or a one-to-one experience between student and instructor. I will say, in the absence of that feature, annotations that say something like identify the thesis are not not really going to be as helpful or as useful with a hypothesis assignment, because as soon as, let me pick on somebody else besides Heidi, as soon as Sterling identifies the thesis, Jessica and Valerie are just going to be like, yeah, what he said. So it's not going to be the most interesting use of annotation in our particular platform. A lot of people are messaging me saying that they only see their own annotations. Valerie has said that a couple times. I'm trying to think about why that would be. One thing to do is to make sure that you're not annotating privately, like so. But even me, I'm seeing everybody's annotations. So I don't know if Aaron or Mike has an idea about why somebody would just see their own annotations. You may need to refresh. You could look for that red icon at the top. Thanks, Eric, for backing me up on that one. But we can circle back to make sure that gets working for you, Valerie. But hard for me as I'm talking here. I had to click on a button at the top to see everyone else's annotations, and that's what Denise says. And it may be this, is it this red button, Denise, that you clicked on to reveal other people's stuff? This is essentially a sort of internal refresh page, top right, and was it a red arrow? Yeah, this red arrow, if I just haven't touched it once in the course of Jeremy blabbing on, I might not see other stuff. Oh, look, a GIF. Ty, you get a coffee mug with hypothesis on it. Nice work. All right, let's show you how to create this. I know I'm gone on a little too long. There's some more stuff I'd like to share. But the creation process here, and I'm a little new to this, so bear with me. I'm reading an email from Mike at the same time. Say I want to add another reading to this course, right? We've already finished reading 1. Let's add a reading 2. So I'm going to go to assignments and
you will need to go back into instructor view.
Okay, back to instructor view.
Yeah.
Okay. Add a new assignment. I'm going to call it reading reading 2. Now, Mike, you had said, is there a way to make it not, so I can create a due date. This one will be due Monday, everybody. So sorry, you have some work over the July 4th weekend here. I'm going to make it out of 10, but how would I make it not gradable?
Okay, so that's not as apparent because it's not on the general, it's on the scoring tab. And if you see where it says exclude, along the left side of the thing, and then if you don't want it in the grade book at all, you click that hide this assignment from the scores page.
Okay.
And so there's no score involved and all that kind of stuff, and it's just an activity that the students can do.
Okay, let's see how this goes. All right, so I did that. Now I go to the. Oh,
well, there you missed a step. So let's. We need to change that assignment to a learning module.
Great.
And then go to the learning module tab and select the global configuration. And then from global module, you select hypothesis.
Great.
And now save it, and then you go into student view to configure it on
Cool.
configure it in hypothesis.
Got it. So now I'm going back in as a student and I'm launching it. And this is where I'm going to configure the assignment and specifically where I'm going to choose the reading if it comes up. And while it's thinking about it, hopefully I haven't done some misstep in that process that's causing this circling of my computer here. You guys can still hear me? I haven't lost the internet. The internet still exists in Texas, Austin. Unresponsive. Let's start again. You guys still hear me? I hear somebody breathing, so I'm assuming
I'm still hearing you. I'll mute my mic. Sorry.
No, it could be somebody else breathing. The breathing is helpful. It helps me know that somebody's still there. Thanks for the thumbs up, somebody. Let me just try this one more time. Okay, so that was a little blip there, but here we are. So this is, you go into student view and you open it back up again, and this is where you configure it as the instructor in terms of what reading is going to be annotatable. And these are my options, and there were questions in the chat about this. My options are either to select a URL from a public web page, and I'll demonstrate that in a second, or a PDF from Google Drive. This would require a Google identity and to associate a Google account with your hypothesis account, or with, you have to authorize Google account here. And that would allow you to go into a Google Drive and select a PDF, or to go through our Google Picker and point to a PDF. So I'll quickly just show that.
So Jeremy, in that case, does that document have to be shared with everybody, like open?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now I've added another text. It's a article from the New York Times. It's a PDF. I grabbed it from my Google Drive. So let me go back and just show this whole process one more time, because it is a little extensive and I fumbled my way through it. So I'm back as an instructor, just walking folks through one more time how to do this. And it looks like the grading thing still showed up. I wonder why that is. I'm going to add a new assignment, reading 3. I'm going to go into scoring and try to do this again. Save and go back to general and click demo assignments. Actually choose learning modules. Don't say anything, Mike. I want to make sure I can do it myself. Learning module, reading 3, title, demo assignments. This one will be due next Friday, folks. And I'm going to make it out of 10 again. So I'm going to save that. Oh, I need to go to the learning module and configure it as a global configuration. Choose hypothesis. And save. And now go in student view to configure it. And I want to pause here one more time again to address some of the questions. So that PDF from the New York Times, these PDFs would be hosted in an associated Google Drive, and there was some questions about copyright. in that regard. And I don't know if we have any librarians on the line or people from Pearson or something like that. We are not copyright lawyers. And so this is a question you're gonna have to ask yourself and in conjunction perhaps with your library, whether it's fair use to rehost something from your library resource as a PDF in a Google Drive. Are you guys technically a Google school or not? You're a Microsoft school or some other cloud platform school?
We have Google Apps for Education, but it hasn't been enabled for everybody.
Okay. So
yet.
technically, Google is a product that you're supporting as an institution. So in my experience, some schools would argue that rehosting could be acceptable if it's a system that the school is managing. Others, there are strict rules around how you link to library resources. I actually spoke with JSTOR this morning. We're working with a lot of the library aggregators like JSTOR, EBSCO, ProQuest, as well as publishers to create more options at this stage for users. And in fact, I think it's okay for me to say that we're working with VitalSource on a specific pilot that might launch at BYU around VitalSource content. So there might be another option here eventually for you to click and see what VitalSource resources are available to this particular course and create annotation assignments through them. But for right now, these are your options. A public web page where I'm going to enter a URL, like this one, or a PDF as I showed you through Google Drive. And I'll just say one more time that the Google Drive integration, you can go and point to an existing file in your Google Drive folders, but you can also upload from your desktop during that workflow as well. So now you guys should have these 3 readings, and you can pop into to them as well. They're all annotation related. If you want some inspiration, I particularly love the Sam Anderson piece about thinking about the power of being able to see what other people are thinking about a text as you're reading. And that sort of concludes the demo-y part of this. The Google Picker, Pauline, allows you to, is just a way to, I call it Google Picker, but essentially there's a window into your Google Drive. You could just call it, it's Google Drive. But I call it the Google Picker because it allows you to pick for Hypothesis from resources that you have available in Google. Box integration is coming, but this is what, for now, this is what you get.
If the file were publicly available through Box though, and you put it in the URL, would it?
Yes.
You think?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
If you have something in Box and then you say make this publicly available, you could use the URL pathway to link to that.
There was a question in the annotations from, I believe it was from Amy Williams, that I thought was pretty good. Oh, where is it? I can't find it right now. So let me try.
You trying to find a question?
Yeah. Okay, let me see.
Feel free to surface it as it comes up. I just want to run through 3 last-minute sort of provocations before we finish up. Ideas for Hypothesis in the classroom. One, I just want you to keep in mind that although I'm an English professor and value close reading, it's not just about reading. It's also about community, especially at a time when we may not be able to build and maintain community in traditional ways that we're used to. A lot of feedback I get from students and teachers, especially after this past spring, is how powerful Hypothesis was in terms of keeping a close-knit collaborative community intact in the classroom, which is certainly true outside of the context of a pandemic as well. A neat way to start off with Hypothesis is to have students annotate your syllabus. It's a great way to have students just start playing around with the tool and thinking about what's to come in a course, especially when you may not be able to meet face-to-face to have that conversation, and opens your course up to a little bit of co-design from your students. Maybe they have some expertise to share or add. It's true that you can just turn this on for students and give them back the margin and see how they use it, both as a private and a public, to the course resource for reading and collaborating on knowledge, understanding, and creation. You can be more guided in your annotations. We certainly see a lot of professors who gloss a text for students. Some professors will pre-populate a text with prompts that they want students to respond to, basically moving the discussion form into the context of the text itself. And of course, you can model any type of annotation you want your students to do, right? If it's a particular type of critical reading, you can model that for them. And I think the more engaged you are with their annotation and present as part of the conversation, the better. I think the bread and butter of what we're providing is sort of asynchronous seminar style discussion, having students starting to engage the text and with each other ahead of a meeting, whether that meeting is face-to-face or through Zoom and remote. It's a way to basically have conversation around the text, everybody on the same page, as it were, as you might. In this idyllic image of the professor on the quad, reading and talking about books and ideas with students, which is certainly why I went to grad school. Quickly realized that's not exactly what English professors are being trained to do, but it's part of it. And then finally, if you're teaching more of a lecture-based course and you have a slide deck or lecture notes, this is a way to, you can also have students engage with those if you can make them into PDFs and share them in Learning Suite. I'll stop there and just say, BYU is part of a formal pilot with us. There's a lot of folks in the BYU Online that are using us in Canvas. And then now we're integrated in Learning Suite, thanks to Mike. And as part of that pilot, you're in good company across the country, a lot of other colleges. This is not even updated with the most recent batch of pilots. We have over 60 schools piloting this fall. You obviously have technical support through us, although we'll need help from Mike in terms of the Learning Suite of it all. But you also have pedagogical support. Aaron and I are both trained as educators. Everybody I've hired on my team has a background in education and can talk pedagogy, which is important for me. And then finally, we're really about trying to create community around annotation and how annotation is implemented in the classroom. I hope to do that at BYU, that some of the folks on this call will stick around and perhaps meet ahead of the fall or at some point in the middle of the fall to share challenges and successes with each other and with us. But also, if you have a particular discipline that you're really interested in how annotation is getting used there, we can connect you with folks at other academic institutions that might be doing similar work as you in a particular field and the teaching of that field. So I'll stop there, just 3 minutes shy of the hour, and say thanks so much for having me. And we may have time for a couple questions before 1 o'clock my time.
Okay, I did see one question in the annotation is actually from Denise Stevens. How do we teach students to effectively annotate and the value of annotation? So get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big one for the 2 minutes we have left. I mean, when I introduced this to students originally, I mean, I said, as you know, I handed out the, you were just being snarky. Teach science students who hate to write. I said this is fundamental, being able to read somebody else's ideas and understand them and then, build on them is fundamental to what we're doing here. And so annotation is a key to that activity, certainly in the composition and English classes I teach, but also I think across the disciplines. And the effectiveness of annotation, how to be effective is, may range across disciplines, right? I might look back at reading one here and say I think there was one example of where some people did an overlapping annotation. So here you can see that Mike had a parallel annotation. So my comment to Mike might be, it's not really a good example here, but Mike, you might consider responding to your classmate rather than creating a whole new thread. So effective annotation can be simple like that, in the sense of like, if somebody's already annotated something, consider if your point is really different, you could re-annotate it. But if your point is, related, do it as a response. I think effective annotation also involves effective conversation. And so talking about how you build on somebody else's ideas or how you productively disagree with somebody, these are conversations to have. I've known teachers that have had a little, spiel or even kind of a writing of not a bill of rights, I don't know what the term is, like a constitution for the course, saying like, this is how we're going to use annotation. We're going to be respectful of each other. We're going to be respectful of the text. We're going to write in full sentences, whatever. We're going to have some sort of ground rules for how we proceed. Awesome. Well, thanks for your time today, everybody. Please be in touch with Aaron or I as you move forward. We're happy to help get things set up. And Aaron's put a meeting scheduler in the chat here if you want to set up a one-to-one when the rubber hits the road and you need some help. We're here for you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Jeremy and Aaron from Hypothes.is. Aaron, I'm sorry I didn't introduce you at first. I can't remember your, I'll be right on. I can't remember your title. So, but Aaron from,
No problem.
from Hypothes.is, go ahead. So what is your title, Aaron?
I am the customer success specialist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then we definitely want to know Aaron. Anyway, so thank you, everybody. The recording of this and a link to the slides that Jeremy used will be available, I hope, by the end of the day on Teach Anywhere. And if you can't remember Jeremy and Aaron's contact information, you're welcome to contact me at the CTL, and I can put you in touch with them. So, and I can also help you with getting this integrated in Learning Suite or Canvas if need be. All right, thank you so much, and we'll see y'all. There is not a meeting next week, but the following week on the 15th, we'll be back with this series. So we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Happy July 4th weekend.
Okay, bye-bye.